let's switch gears to our first speaker. We hear a lot about blockchain. Is it hyped? Is it not? Is it the future of where technology is headed? And our next speaker is someone who went from being a banker for many years to now being an entrepreneur in the blockchain space. And he's here to tell us what's going on. His name is Daniel Gasteiger. He is the co-founder of Nexus Squared. You'll learn more about him and his company now. Join me in welcoming Daniel to the stage.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak to you about blockchain today at this fabulous event. As you might see, I'm from Switzerland. I flew all the way here from Switzerland, and I'm very, very glad that I can explain to you blockchain in a bit of a broader fashion than we had it in a panel 2 days ago. I'll give it an overview, general overview of what blockchain is, where it comes from. Technology, I will skip because I'm not a technologist, as you heard, so I cannot explain you anything behind cryptographic rules and so forth with blockchain, but that's not the goal anyway. It's about giving you a broad overview of what blockchain is all about, and most importantly, what the potential is of it. As we heard, I gave up my career in banking after 20 years to join this blockchain hype. Exactly a year ago, I was in Silicon Valley 2 years ago for a study trip to get inspired about my own personal professional future, and I was kind of coming across this topic everywhere. Everywhere it was kind of this hype about this blockchain, and I started reading books, and after coming back, I resigned from my job, and I decided to get with a colleague to found this company called Nexus Squared, and our goal is to help startups in the blockchain space in Europe to come to market. So we have an accelerator program that dedicates itself to the blockchain topic, so we only take blockchain startups from Europe into the program, and anything around that topic of blockchain. So we do consultancy, do public speaking like today. I've started my own startup in the blockchain space now in Estonia with a digital identity background based on blockchain. So everything we do is blockchain, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, of course. So beyond the hype, let's start with an introduction. Where does it actually come from, this topic? It all started in 2008 at the height of the financial crisis, mid-September 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed. AIG had to be rescued by the US government. Just around at exactly that same time when the trust in the financial system was completely lost and completely gone. Nobody believed in the banks anymore, and everybody was just kind of shocked by what happened. Exactly at that time, something started to happen, and it was the birth of the blockchain technology as we know it. And the first application of blockchain technology is Bitcoin. And that was basically, the birth of Bitcoin was exactly at that time. November 2008, somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper on the internet, which was called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And the first sentence in that white paper said basically that in the future it will be possible to do online payments between two parties without going through a financial institution. So on one hand, we had the complete collapse of the financial system. On the other hand, we had this release of this white paper suggesting that there's no banks needed anymore in the future, all at the same time. So it was very, very, we don't know if it was a coincidence or not, because nobody knows Satoshi Nakamoto is a pseudonym. Nobody knows who he really is. But be it as it is, that was the birth of Bitcoin. And so you imagine Bitcoin being the first application of blockchain, the technology, like email was the first application of the internet. And so that's kind of similar to comparison. And there are other comparisons that you will see to do with internet and blockchain. I'll come to that in a second. But Bitcoin basically since then has been out there, it's been growing in popularity. It had a lot of scandals, and people were kind of getting a bit suspicious about it. One scandal was Mt. Gox. This was a trading platform in Japan that collapsed, and people lost about $450 million on it. Another scandal was Silk Road. This is a dark web trading platform for anything illegal, so drugs, weapons, even hitmen could be bought. The payment of choice was Bitcoin, so obviously that also tarnished the actual reputation of this cryptocurrency, so-called cryptocurrency, which obviously to today is being used by the press as arguments against Bitcoin. But if both scandals have been put in perspective, if you look at Mt. Gox, 450 million, at the same time, somebody called Madoff lost people 60 billion, so 100 times more. Something completely unrelated, but I mean, obviously a similar situation with losses to investors. And on the Silk Road side, biggest problem still when it comes to drug money laundering, to do with anything illegal, weapons, the biggest problem is still cash money. And the biggest problem with cash money are the big denominations of banknotes. And especially in Switzerland, we have this 1,000 francs bill. It's huge. That's the reason why these illegal things are still happening, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is such a tiny issue when it comes to these illegal activities that we can really say this is a lot of hype in the press, but it's not something that is really an issue. The bigger issue, I think, with Bitcoin is the volatility. Since it started in 2009, the price until 2013, it was kind of nothing. It was kind of useless, worthless. Then it exploded during the Cyprus crisis from $0 to $1,000 per Bitcoin. Then it collapsed again, and then ever since, it kind of went up and down with huge volatility numbers, which obviously doesn't help the people being able to trust this payment mechanism. But since about 2 years now, we see a steady upwards trend, still a lot of volatility involved, but we kind of see it at least a little bit more stable. And so I guess more and more people will start to see that this is an alternative asset class, not just a cryptocurrency that is used for payments, but you can actually invest in it. And in the long run, and that's already happening in the US, the first family offices and hedge funds got together. In the long run, this will actually be a completely uncorrelated asset class to invest in for professional investors, I would say. I wouldn't go with my own money. I don't have a big Bitcoin holding myself, but I would not say that it's not possible to invest if you have like basically 1 or 2% of your assets to invest it into Bitcoin. It's certainly not a big problem. Just this week, there was a forecast from Saxo Bank, I think, suggesting that Bitcoin might be at $2,000 next year. We are currently about $770, so there's a nice upside potential. So that's history. That's the thing, how it all started. Bitcoin, first application of the technology. But we are still at the very beginning. And to illustrate that, I would like to show you a video that basically shows you exactly the same situation we are in now with blockchain. We were in 20 years ago, or a little bit more than 20 years ago with the internet. A lot of hype, a lot of things names that nobody understood, protocol names and so forth. And to illustrate exactly that situation we are in now with blockchain, I have this video that I would like to show you.
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I've never heard it. I've never heard it said. I'd always seen the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
Yeah, I heard it around or about in the lunchroom.
See, there it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
well, Allison should know.
What is internet anyway?
Internet is that massive computer network, the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in the studio shortly. What does it mean?
It's a giant computer network made up of started from.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like a computer billboard.
It's not. It's a computer billboard, but it's nationwide. It's several universities and everything all joined together.
Right.
And others can access it.
Right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
It came in really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie another.
But you don't need that. You don't need a phone line to operate the internet. No, apparently not.
There we go. That's exactly where we are with blockchain. I'm 100% convinced. We are at the very beginning. People, including me, pseudo experts, trying to explain it. Nobody really understands what it is, and nobody definitely understands what the potential is. I just know personally, I'm a big believer that this has the same potential like the internet had 20 years ago. And we don't know, like we didn't know at that time what it can actually do. We didn't know about Facebook, Google, anything like this. We don't know now what it actually will do to the economy and the future of financial services, for instance, when it comes to this technology. So let's start with the definitions. Let's start a little bit with introduction. And I used two of my heroes when it comes to the topic. One is Don Tapscott, an author of one of the books I absolutely suggest to read if you're interested. He talks about the technology that facilitates peer-to-peer transactions without intermediaries. That's the same thing like Bitcoin, the white paper said. There's going to be nobody in the middle between two parties doing a transaction. It's going to be reconciled by mass collaboration. Important aspect, there's a lot of people involved, so it's mass rather than a central authority, a central party that is doing everything. And it's stored in a ledger, so it's basically somewhere out there is a store of all these transactions that are taking place. That's the first definition. A little bit of a different view on the topic is from Andreas Antonopoulos. He's probably the biggest brain when it comes to the technology itself. He talks about a decentralized system of trust. Again, the fact that there's trust involved that nobody really needs. It's actually decentralized, which is very important in that context. And now, absolutely top critical is the fact that it cannot be altered. So once something is stored in that ledger or in that database, it cannot be altered anymore, forever. And that's called digital immutability, which basically is a new concept when it comes to digital assets or digital representation of values, because so far in the internet everything can be copied easily and it can be distributed, it can be copied 3-4 times and nobody really knows who owns the original. With blockchain, this is a thing of the past. And he said this nice thing that written in stone will be rewritten and will be called written in blockchain in 100 years, because it will be the same thing. It will actually be tamper-proof forever. And that's an absolute critical concept of blockchain technology. And now, kind of just my own explanation, how I usually explain it. At the core of it is a database. So it's basically, people call it a ledger, I call it a database, where transactions are recorded. This database is public, so it can be accessed by anybody. This is an important concept because if it can be accessed by anybody, anybody can supervise it. So basically it's going to be impossible to hack it. It's also public in the sense that it's open source technology, so anybody that wants to can check the code of the blockchain, can actually help to make it better, improve it, which is also critical in the future because, again, we are at the beginning, and I'll come to that in a second. It's distributed. Another core principle of blockchain, it's not centrally stored somewhere, so it cannot be centrally attacked, but it's distributed across the globe on thousands of computers. Anybody that wants to participate in the network, i.e. the mass collaboration, can participate and help. The more people participate, the safer the network gets. It's synchronized, so constantly synchronized means it cannot be, again, tampered with, because constantly these thousands of computers are actually making sure that everybody understands the real situation. Synchronized means that every 10 minutes, all the transactions that took place in the previous 10 minutes will be consolidated into a block, hence the name blockchain. These blocks of transactions will then be checked by all the nodes, so-called nodes in the system, to make sure that everybody agrees that these are the transactions that are valid, that are true. Once that is done, that collaboration process is completed, which is called the consensus process. It actually be linked to the previous block with cryptographic rules and cryptographic measures, and that means basically it's becoming a chain. And if you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, for instance, if you want to, you can look back to the first block that was built back in 2009 now and see what's in there. And ever since, every single 10 minutes, a block has been added to this chain of blocks, and hence the name blockchain. And that makes it absolutely bulletproof. So it cannot be faked, because every 10 minutes, this block will be actually added to, and so if you want to, after 20 minutes, do something to the one from 10 minutes ago, it's actually not possible anymore. That's the whole the whole secret behind blockchain technology from a very, very high level. I don't want to go into any further details. One, because I can't. I'm not a technologist, as I said. And two, it's not important. It's actually important that you understand the basics. Why is it safe, and why is it so revolutionary? And the benefits, to come to that, disintermediation again. So basically it allows to transact between two parties without anybody in the middle. That can be banks, that can be notaries, that can be anybody that provides trust, as we do transact now together. That will be gone. It can be gone also in the sense that we don't need any intermediaries anymore, like be it Uber, be it Airbnb, be it Facebook for personal information. All of these systems can be actually eventually go, and I'll come to that in a second with examples. It's actually ultra secure, as I said. Transparency, nobody can hack it because everybody can oversee it. And immutability, nobody can hack it because actually it's been saved forever in that cryptographic hash. Speed of transactions. If I transfer bitcoins to you, in 10 minutes the bitcoins have arrived and you own them and you can use them. Not like if I transfer money to you via a bank, that takes 2 or 3 days until you have it. It's in 10 minutes that you own the money and you can use it again. That's absolutely critical also when it comes to the financial services of the future, because nobody will ever pay any more to transact money from say, Switzerland to Japan. It takes 4 days. It costs 60 Swiss francs because it actually goes back and forth 3 times until it arrives, because all the details are correct. Now, in the future, nobody will pay for that anymore, and it will be done in this real-time fashion of blockchain technology. And banks are already working on this. And lastly, infrastructure cost savings. Obviously, if people share the infrastructure, it's going to be cheaper. Negative or challenges. Clearly, again, with the topic of nascent technology, it's new. It's going to be better. It's going to be more efficient. At the moment, it's going to cost a lot of money because energy is expensive and a lot of cryptographic rules are taking a lot of energy. That's known. That's not a problem that's going to be resolved. I would like to remind everybody again at the 90s, when we first saw the first websites and the first pictures on these websites, these GIFs, so-called GIFs, took forever to load. When you wanted to look at the website, you could go and get a coffee until you got back, the website was loaded. Nobody could ever think of watching a video real-time streamed. That's now possible. The same thing will be with blockchain technology. There is going to be issues. They will be resolved. Much bigger problem from my perspective is regulatory and political uncertainty, and people simply don't understand how to regulate this technology, because it's borderless, because it actually holds a lot of things that are people cannot understand them. By definition, they cannot regulate them. So that's a big problem, because the startups we talk to, they don't know exactly in what legal situations they are in, and so with that, we definitely have to work. And lastly, with the public blockchains, they depend on a network, so if nobody participates in that network, it will never work. With blockchain, in the case of Bitcoin, obviously we have a big network, but we have hundreds of other blockchains out there that are currently out there, but they don't get any traction because people don't participate in them. And there's obviously reasons for that. Good, so let's look at the status quo. Where are we? I'll give you now some real examples to make this a bit more tangible, hopefully. And I would like to start with World Economic Forum report from this August. They did a big report mainly for financial services, but they looked at what's out there with blockchain, what's going on. And I guess that's to show you that it's not really a hype anymore, because obviously there's a lot of things going on. First of all, 80% of all banks are expected to work with this technology next year. So it's not a hype, because by definition, if almost all banks are looking into this topic, then by definition it's probably more than a hype. It's been more than 1.4 billion US dollars have been invested in startups in the space over the last 3 years. 90 central banks are looking at 24 countries are looking into it. And a lot of patents are already filed for the use of blockchain. Real applications, for instance, are Xapo. It's a Bitcoin wallet company that actually enables you to hold these Bitcoins that you eventually probably buy if you want to get involved. Another example is Everledger. They're building a use case to save all diamonds that have ever been mined into a database to make sure that in the future everybody knows which diamonds are of good origin and which are blood diamonds, so that you can actually in the future stop having this issue with blood diamonds, because you have the ultimate proof in the blockchain of Everledger that a diamond was from a good origin. And that's now to show how these transactions that are tamper-proof, that cannot be hacked, ultimately will help the different industries to work much better in the future. Then we have Open Bazaar. Open Bazaar is the decentralized eBay, so a shop that basically trades directly with the end consumer. So you can set up your own website, if you want to call it like this, on the blockchain with Open Bazaar and start selling your, in this case, honey, directly to your end customers. And the connection is peer-to-peer. There's nobody in the middle that gets any fees. It's an open source technology, it's an open source platform, so this will eventually replace eBay. Another thing that will happen soon is basically digital identities and smart contracts. Smart contracts are the next evolution of blockchain technology. Going to the topic of Ethereum now, basically they will enable you to, anything that's currently in a written contract can be automated in a software contract if you want, and that's so-called smart contract. And that will open a completely whole new range of services that can be done on the blockchain with that so-called smart contract technology. And personally, and that's my startup that I mentioned at the beginning, personally I'm very interested in helping governments and companies to come closer to the people and the citizens of countries by having digital identities a reality. I'm a big fan of Estonia. Estonia has had a digital society for more than 15 years now. They have everything digitalized from the government's perspective. And we are building now a software that is a blockchain-based technology that is also replicating what Estonia already has done. So you will eventually have a digital identity that you self-manage, that is basically under your control, with which you eventually access all these services that are currently done manually, in most countries still, and fully automated and fully secure. And lastly, as a utopia, I would like to kind of show you the potential of this technology. With blockchain, it actually is possible, as I said earlier, to replace Uber and have a peer-to-peer Uber service, which is a P-Uber if you want. And it's actually an autonomous taxi service that will have self-driving taxis as they are. This is an example of one in Singapore currently being tested, self-driving taxis. And not only are they self-driving, they're also self-maintaining themselves. So they basically will call up the garage themselves and have an arrangement for a service of the car. They can pay for it with their wallet. You've seen before Zappo, like a wallet like for cryptocurrencies. They can actually maintain themselves completely autonomously. And eventually, if they're very productive, they can replicate themselves by ordering new taxis and adding it to their fleet. And on top of that, what will be possible is insurances will be done by such so-called smart contracts, and they will only be paid by the fact when they're actually being used. So there will be insurances on demand in the future. You don't pay an insurance for a year if you don't use it really every day. You pay for it when you're actually using the car, and so forth. But that's utopia. That's something we'll probably see in 30, 40 years, or if we probably never see that. But it's something that people are extremely excited about because it shows the full potential of this technology coupled with other technologies that are out there. And now lastly, before we finish this, I would like to quickly highlight the fact that Switzerland and blockchain are a match made in heaven. Because basically, the blockchain technology, the philosophy of blockchain technology is to empower people, to decentralize power, to basically empower the individuals again. And Switzerland, obviously, as a neutral country with a direct democracy, with a lot of actual power of the individuals, and not centrally power in Bern, our capital, is exactly replicating this in real life. And so what we're doing, we're building an ecosystem around the Lake of Zug at the moment. It's called Crypto Valley. We have lots of startups there. And now we kind of grow this into Zurich with a vision to actually build up a trust square, basically to build the topic of trust in the topic of blockchain. We want to kind of use that idea of that trust and build up an ecosystem around an airfield that's currently still an army airfield where we build an innovation park. And anybody that is interested in this topic, and especially any startups that are interested in building startups around the topic of blockchain, are invited to contact us. Here are my contact details, and see if we can actually work together in that campus, because we definitely think that Switzerland, especially with our values of the country, can actually do a lot with this topic of blockchain. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I think we have a few more minutes for questions. Thank you very much.